Let's go to our main man, Brandon Lee Gouton, joining us from Bleeding Green Nation here on Birds 365. BLG, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Wednesday as we prep for Super Bowl 59, brother?
Yeah, I'm excited. Can't believe the Eagles are back here.
Yeah.
2 times in 3 years.
2 times in 3 years. It's the glory days of the Philadelphia Eagles. Boy, Zander was talking about that as he popped on. I do think the Chiefs get in people's heads before the game starts, BLG, and that's part of their mystique, and that's what happens when you have as much success as them. How do you take that? I think the Eagles are going to approach it the right way, but if some of that mentality seeps in, like, woe is me if a call, 50-50 call goes a different direction and that kind of stuff, you're going to have a difficult time beating this team.
Yeah, the Eagles can't buy into that. Outside observers certainly can. I think I've bought into that from a standpoint of it just seems like they kind of have, for lack of a better phrase, like this kind of like devil magic working for them sometimes where
I do think it's real from this perspective. I've always
yeah.
said, I mean, when I covered the NBA, we've been talking NBA for some, because the Eagles were with LeBron last night looking like teenage girls, by the way, when LeBron showed up. But the Jordan rules is it's real because he turned into the superstar that he turned into, and then he got deference. So I do think, when you're that good, I think you tend to get the benefit of the doubt, but that's part of breaking through against a great player or a great team or whatever it is. I think that part of it's real. I don't think anybody's up writing the script like Dean Blandino's brother believes. If you saw that clip, that was kind of funny. Or the NFL wants Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl. 150 million people are watching before she showed up and are watching now. The script talk, I don't believe that at all. And I think if you believe that, you're beaten before the kickoff.
Yeah, I don't, the script thing, no. I do think, there are things along the way that could certainly be influenced or massaged or however you want to put it. Sure. Like, I don't think that's entirely out of the question, but I don't think that's the reason the Chiefs win. I think they win because, they have the best head coach, arguably, of all time and what might turn out to be the best quarterback of all time. And it's pretty simple as that. And obviously, there's more than that. And, I think someone who doesn't get enough credit in that whole thing is like Brett Veach and the job he does every year of, surrounding those guys with
I don't think Chris Jones gets enough credit as a player.
Exactly. Yep.
They do have some other good players besides Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. But I do want to get your quick thoughts because I'm in a minority here. And they're not even going against each other. But I do want to get your thoughts on Vic Fangio versus Steve Spagnuolo. Boy, people in Philadelphia love Spags. Spags. I don't know if it's Anthony Gargano or what, but they love Spags. I'd rather have Vic. I think Vic's better. I think Vic's the guy everybody copies. Vic's the guy everybody, when they want a defense, hey, let's go run Vic's scheme. And they don't tend to not run it well, but that's another conversation. And I always go back. Spags in New Orleans Spags in 2016, 2 of the 3 worst defenses of all time at the time. I could never see Vic put that together. I think he's better. Am I crazy?
I think, it's hard. Spags has achieved more, right? Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And part of that is, being on the right teams and the right situations. The Brady, the Giants beating those Patriots teams, that's pretty good. Like those are pretty crowning achievements. But more recently, it's hard to separate him from he has Mahomes on the other side, and I think that it adds some shine and certainly probably allows you to be more aggressive and risky too, because you're not like, okay, the defense gets beat, big deal, quarterback's going to come through at the end. So I think it's just a really good marriage there. But yeah, I mean, I would say this year certainly I'm taking Vic Fangio over Spags.
BLJ, how much do you think the experience from the Super Bowl 2 years ago helps this team? Or maybe it doesn't at all, in your opinion. That's fine too. But do you think that Super Bowl experience 2 years ago will help this team as they prep for obviously their second in 3 years versus the same opponent?
Yeah, I don't think it hurts. So I guess that's helping in that, I think there'll be more of a routine for it for some of the players, or, more knowing what to expect going into next week and everything that is associated with that. I don't think, it makes this huge difference in the game itself, but I don't think it can hurt. I think it's only a positive for however much it does count.
Kellen Moore is the leader in the clubhouse. BLG, is he distracted? Can he possibly get the Philadelphia Eagles to the precipice of a Super Bowl championship? Thinking about the New Orleans Saints roster. Are we going to go through this again? It looks like we are. Look, I've always been steadfast. Like anybody, Kellen Moore's never won a Super Bowl. You don't want to get to this spot and show, I'm not going to give my all to win a Super Bowl. Do you give any credence to this? If he does get the Saints job, you're going to hear it, especially if they lose. I mean, obviously, if they win, you're not going to hear it. But any credence that this is taking anything away from the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, if people are going to say that, I just, I don't remember them saying that about Shane Steichen leading up to the Super Bowl when he actually.
Well, they said it because they said it about Gannon.
Right. Well, yeah. And then I think that's become so conflated with the actual problem of the Gannon situation, which is that, he impermissibly talked to the Cardinals and, left the Eagles out of the loop there, and that screwed them over as it related to Vic Fangio. But yeah, with Steichen, Steichen actually talked to the Colts, by the way.
Yeah. And Gannon didn't talk to the Cardinals.
Well, and even closer to the Super Bowl. I think it was the Saturday before the Super Bowl the next weekend, whereas, Kellen Moore is talking to the Saints the day after the championship game. So, you kind of square that away early on, and now Kellen ostensibly can just focus on preparing for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. BLG, talk to me about what you mentioned it at this topic when you came on. 2 Super Bowls in 3 years. Pretty impressive stuff. Pretty unprecedented stuff here in Philly. From really, it started when Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts showed up. What do you think a win in this game would do for their legacy, specifically in Philly? Like, I know they haven't been here as long as some people, but this is pretty unprecedented what they're doing. What would a win in this Super Bowl do for the legacy of Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni in Philly?
Yeah, I think I'll start with Jalen first. I mean, with Jalen too, like for as magical as Nick Foles winning the Super Bowl was incredible and this amazing moment and story that'll always be appreciated in Philadelphia. The first time, the first time you win the Super Bowl, assuming the Eagles win other times, is I think going to stick out much more than other ones if that comes to pass. But at the same time, I think there's an element of that where Nick wasn't the starter moving forward. So it kind of you don't have that almost living trophy to point to. Right. Hey, that's our guy who won the Super Bowl. That's exciting. We're behind that guy the way that, Patriots had with Tom Brady and Chiefs have with Mahomes. I think that's just kind of a whole different feeling that Eagles fans really didn't get to enjoy as much. A little bit in 2018, sure, when he played again, but, short-lived. So I think there's a really, more satisfying element to that for Eagles fans if Hurts gets there. And then with Sirianni, I guess I don't know how it's too different from Doug in some ways, and the standpoint too that they were both counted out in a lot of ways. Sirianni, all he does is win. Obviously, he has the 5th best winning percentage among coaches of all time.
Super Bowl era, yeah.
So it only really just boosts his resume. That is pretty ridiculous to this point.
Yeah, and he doesn't, I hear a lot, and, it was a big thing in the post-game press conference after the NFC Championship game with both Jalen and Nick, the disrespect card, whatever you want to call it. 2 things. What did you make of Jalen's straightjacket comment? And then Nick with the the tangent of going, oh, Joe Montana had Jerry Rice, Tom Brady had all these great players, which he's right, by the way. Nobody can succeed without good players around them. Why go down that route? Because I think they both claim to not listen to outside noise, but it's very evident that when winning matchup with style points, as I describe it, BLG, that they like to spike the football and say, see, I know I probably asked too much of you there, but take all that in and go where you want with it. It's weird to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a lie. Well, just like we're not paying attention to that. Of course you are. It's inevitable. I mean, it's
Yeah.
everywhere. It's on the radio. It's on your phone. Even if they aren't actually, opening Bleeding Green Nation, which I would hope they would do, for my sake.
Well, they are. They are.
For their sake, I hope they're not. Then their family, their wife, their whoever, people around them that absolutely are. It's just inescapable. So I don't buy that, obviously. And they can say what they want to say. The straitjacket comment is fitting for what I think Jalen has alluded to previously about, like, kind of in his mind at least, like having to take a step back to a more run heavy offense and probably feeling like, okay, the perception of that is like, well, then I'm not as good, and then having a big performance like he did in the championship game, which he was awesome. Probably wanting to flex a little bit after that. And so it's weird. It's weird, and it's very funny because Eagles win, they're going to the Super Bowl, everything's great. If the Eagles weren't winning, those comments would be viewed differently.
Yeah.
Right. All right, let me give you the eagle color glasses. Maybe it's eagle color glasses, but let me give you the optimistic perspective on how I saw those comments from Jalen Hurts. All right. Most quarterbacks would not accept a role where they took a back seat to a running game 2 years removed from being second in the MVP voting and leading your team to a Super Bowl. So while he says that, I do agree it shows that there's certainly some sort of conversation there, but does it also show that Jalen walks the walk in what he says and that he truly does care about winning before any personal accolades? And he was willing to put his ego aside and say, if this is what we want to do and this is what we're capable of doing as a running team, I'm good with that, even if I feel like I'm in a straitjacket and every talk show host in the country is going to talk about the fact that I don't get a lot of passing yards. But I'm willing to do that because we're going to go to a Super Bowl. Is that two eagle-colored glasses, or is that fair?
No, I think that's fair. Jalen saying what he said after the Steelers game too. Like, is that what y'all wanted to see? Like,
yeah.
Right.
If you go out there and you perform, you can talk. You've earned the right to talk like that, like he did. Again, he had an awesome game. I think it was the best game of the season, best game in a while. Certainly as a passer specifically too. I think he was like 18 of 20 from the pocket in that game. I mean, it's just like, but at the same time, it is funny because it's exactly like that is why people are talking about it. They're not, and that's not even the thing. I think a lot of the people, having questions about the passing game, it's never just been like, oh, he can't do it. Well, then, because then if that was the case, then the frustration wouldn't be there. It would just be more of an acceptance of the limitation. It's like, no, he is capable of that. So why isn't it happening? That was more of the frustration around that conversation. And again, you see how much it does matter. You can't just say, oh, it doesn't matter. It does matter because when passing game is looking like that, they're scoring 55 points.
And they're spiking the football.
From scoring
they're
60,
validating everything we said, BLG, when they do that. They're validating it. They're actually confirming it, which I don't know why people need confirmation because it's obvious. Yep. But, we were talking about this game and the fact that if you are Steve Spagnuolo, and who is a very good defensive coordinator, even if I think Vic's a little bit better, you're trying to stop Saquon Barkley first and foremost, right? Mm-hmm. You see, it's not disrespect to say, hey, in this situation, you got to pick your poison. I'm picking Saquon. That's the guy you have to stop, right?
I would think so because that still is, even with Hurts looking good and coming off this game, by and large, the identity of the Eagles' offensive attack still, and the fact that he can just break one, and not just one, maybe multiple at any point, is a game changer for this offense, or a tone setter in the case of the last game where opens the game like that. So absolutely. Now at the same time, Spags goes up against Hurts obviously in the Super Bowl last time and did not do so well. And which is interesting and funny in a way, because what did all we talk about last year? Jalen against the blitz couldn't handle it. Seemed to handle it pretty well when the Eagles played the Chiefs in 2022. And he's obviously, I think, been better at it this year than he was last year. So really interested to see that matchup again this time around.
Should be a really good matchup. How about Vic Fangio versus Patrick Mahomes? 0-8. A lot of people talking about that. Now, John has rightfully added the context. Well, those teams weren't too good, those Bronco and Dolphin teams, but 0-8's 0-8, BLG. What do you think of that matchup coming in? Fangio versus Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes is a pretty good matchup.
Yeah, I think Vic Fangio has some tricks up his sleeve still. And I think we've seen that in the playoffs. He's done some things like unscouted looks that he's going to break out. And, that's not to say all of them are definitely going to work. And, scheme is only going to go so far. But I do think he, unlike the last situation the Eagles were going into the Super Bowl with, I have more faith in Vic Fangio to do some things that could maybe trip up Patrick Mahomes here a little bit. I will say, when you look at some of Patrick Mahomes, as much as you pointed out the record there, Vic Fangio's 0-8 against Mahomes. You look at some of the worst passer rating games of Patrick Mahomes' career, and a couple of them where I think 2 of the 3 actually were against Vic Fangio's defenses. So there you go.
Yeah, and I think he's going to make him. The one thing I can sort of nitpick at Patrick Mahomes, and this goes to the point that all quarterbacks, even somebody like that, in every NFL city I talk about all the time, if you're the quarterback, you're going to get some criticism, even the best. And that includes Patrick. And I think post Tyreek Hill, I think the whole mentality has been, all right. And it really started when Tyreek was still there because they were so explosive. Everybody started playing their safeties in the parking lot. And then there was this little bit of a lull where Patrick was frustrated. He tried to force the ball at times. I think that's what Vic's going to do. It might be boring to the fans, but make him go 13 play drives, 15 play drives, 17 play drives. I think that's got to be the way you have to go about it. And this time, when Andy runs corn dog motion in the red zone, don't collapse. And I think that's the communication on the back end. I think that's the biggest difference between Jonathan Gannon's defense, which was great that year, and Vic Fangio's defense, which was great this season. Just don't blow coverages.
Yeah, I was watching back, the Eagles Chiefs highlights from the past Super Bowl, and those touchdowns, I mean, they could not be any more wide open. Like that's just bad. It happens one time, okay, too. It happens the second time, you're like, what are we even doing here? Like it's just you just totally look outclassed. Like it's not even competitive. So yeah, I do think that will be tested. Certainly, we've seen teams, the Commanders, in Week 16, certainly kind of be able to test those Eagles coverage rules. And have success against that. It's not, a perfect system, but I do think when you have a Patrick Mahomes going up against that, he's going to be a guy who's going to have some success against that, or can. But I think at the end of the day, as much as going into the Commanders game, all the talk was Jaden Daniels. He's so good. He's so good. My counter to that was like, Vic Fangio, also very good. So I feel the same way about Mahomes. Mahomes, obviously a different level than Jaden Daniels, but still Vic Fangio has earned a lot of benefit of the doubt this season.
No doubt about it. BLJ coming into this game, I used the stat yesterday on the show: 7 carries for 16 yards. BLJ, you might know what I'm talking about. You know what that stat line represents?
Was that Miles Sanders?
Yes. I knew BLG would get it. That was Miles Sanders in the Super Bowl, my friend. I think the biggest difference in this game compared to that one is obviously the addition of Saquon Barkley, and he's been running wild recently. I don't remember the last time a team shut him down. I think it was Pittsburgh. He had 65 yards. I think that was the last game. He didn't run wild. Is it as simple as BLG? You add him. If the Chiefs can't stop the run, they're going to have a hard time staying with this offense. I think it could be. What say you about Saquon Barkley and the impact he could have on this game?
Yeah, I think this is easier said than done, and also Captain Obvious. Yeah, you should blow. A good strategy would be to try to blow the Chiefs out. as opposed to, if
That would be a good strategy.
if it's a one-score game
Yeah.
and it's late, you're
Yeah,
obviously feeling really good about Mahomes. You almost have to, and again, not easy, but like the way the Bucks beat, Mahomes in the Super Bowl once upon a time, it's just like you have to smother him and like just jump on that team and just totally try to run away with it. So maybe you can try to do that with Saquon Barkley. I do think like that kind of gets under discussed when it comes to the Eagles losing the Super Bowl because we all talk about how the defense struggled, and rightfully so. But Miles Sanders was terrible in that game. I mean,
well, he also broke his hand on the first play. I feel like I have to defend Miles. It's like because Miles had look, I'm not comparing him to Saquon Barkley, obviously, but he had a great season that year. And remember, BLG at the end of the season, he hurt his knee first,
right.
so he wasn't the same.
Yeah,
he's wearing a brace, and then he broke his hand. By the way, he kicked it outside. He shouldn't have kicked it outside.
right.
But he broke his hand. If Saquon breaks his hand on his first play, I don't think he's going to be as good as he typically is.
That's fair. I will say too, even Kenny Gainwell didn't have like a great game
No,
in that Super Bowl either. There's actually a huge, like, I thought underrated sequence from that game where Gainwell, like, I think most running backs, Saquon definitely is like getting a first down. It was like a first down carry or second down or something. And then Isaac Seumalo has that false start or whatever, knocks them back. And then Jalen Hurts has that fumble. There was like, that would have been a first down for most running backs. He somehow just missed the marker there and they get set back. And like, I just don't think, my point being, there's going to be meat left on the bone like there was certainly for the Eagles running backs in that game.
Saquon's having a historic season, so you can't compare the running backs. But I will say part of that historic season is one of the best offensive lines I've ever seen. And we've seen a lot of good offensive lines, BLG, covering this team over the past number of years. It's crazy to think after you lose a future Hall of Fame center and a 6-time All-Pro, and you may have gotten better. I don't think Cam is better than Jason Kelce, but when you add Mekhi Becton into the mix and just Jordan Mailata having his best season, Lane being Lane, Landon having his best season, this might be the best offensive line I've ever seen. And we saw it again with the 60-yard touchdown. Massive hole. AJ deserves credit. He had a great crack block. Dallas Goedert, seal on one side, Jordan Mailata. Saquon didn't get touched till he was 20, 25 yards down the field. Then he got the great spin move. He's the home run hitter. Unbelievable offensive line. I don't think they're going to be healthy, though. I think Cam's going to play. I think Landon's going to play.
Yep.
But, maybe we're not going to see the same offensive line. Any concern there for you?
I will say, I think Tyler Steen deserves some credit here in this. When you look back at two of the Eagles' 3 biggest offensive performances this year in terms of just points scored, 55 in the championship game, the 37 against the Bengals, Tyler Steen was starting at guard in both of those games. Now, I'm not saying it's like all him, but point being, when you have a guard who can come in like that, and he's clearly not a hindrance, clearly not like the offense can't do anything when he's in there. That's a luxury. And that's honestly, I feel like all you want, ideally, from a backup offensive lineman is like just don't destroy the game. Like help us get through the game. Don't be a total weak point. So I do have a level of confidence in Tyler Steen just because they've been able to produce with him if he needs to enter that game at some point, depending on how the injuries hold up with Dickerson and Jurgens there. Also, those guys just deserve a ton of credit for, Landon, especially in that first half, just gutting it out at a different position.
Man. He couldn't even walk at times. I'm like, how
couldn't
is
walk,
he?
but just did enough to like just get, Jurgens them buy time for Jurgens to get like warmed up at halftime and then finish the game out there basically. So really gutty performance from both of those guys. But yeah, I mean, the line is great. You talked about it, Jonathan, the run game. And then again, I said earlier, Jalen was 18 of 20. From the pocket in that game. That doesn't happen, without like really good pass protection as well.
BLG, how about pass rush in this game, man? I think it's going to be huge. You go back to 57 and the sod father and all that bullshit. I mean, holy shit. I don't want to go relive that, but I do think it's going to be a big impact. I mean, that mitigated, think about it, one of the most important reasons the Eagles made the Super Bowl that year is because their pass rush was otherworldly with 70 sacks. It was completely gone in the Super Bowl. Now you have Nolan Smith, who is really emerging as a talent. I think he's really come alive even more in the playoffs. Now he has the most single postseason sacks in franchise history. I think I saw the Eagles put up yesterday with 4 How big of an impact is that going to be in this game? And if Nolan Smith can get a couple sacks on the board, I think it could tilt the game. What do you think?
I mean, Nolan's just, he's extremely hot, 10.5 in the last 15 games. Like that's amazing. That's really good production.
Right.
And he's going up against like high level of competition in that stretch too, especially the past 2 games here when, Rob Havenstein on the Rams and then Zach Tom against the Packers, and in clutch moments as well. Obviously helped to close out the Commanders game there by sacking Jaden Daniels on that 4th down. I do like for the Eagles that it's turf this time around instead of the field there. I do
can't
think
mess it up, I don't think, in that dump of the Superdome, by the way. But,
and you look back at the Eagles' performance against the Saints on that very field. I mean, Saquon that day had 17 for 147 on that field. He was running well there. Obviously, Dallas Goedert had a monster game with AJ and Devontae getting knocked out, AJ out of that game. And then another player, I think maybe most relevantly, who had a monster game on that surface was one Jalen Carter. A different situation going up against the Chiefs offensive line than the Saints offensive line. But Carter was an absolute monster, just totally took that game over. And that's just another difference, again, from this Super Bowl to the past one. Like having Jalen Carter in there.
Also, sneakily, I think, to some, the Chiefs have a very good pass rush.
Sure.
George Karlaftis has kind of turned the corner.
I think he had 3 sacks, didn't he, in that
no,
it wasn't the AFC Championship game. It was
he's been very good. Omenahu's been very good as a pass rusher. Plus, you have Chris Jones. I mean, Chris Jones is unbelievable player. So the script writers are not going to want to slow down the Chiefs either. So you got that as well. So because it's the pass rush is something the Eagles are going to have to deal with. In theory, and then you have the blitzing, certainly at big spots with Steve Spagnuolo. But hopefully, are you going to New Orleans, BLG?
I will not be in New Orleans. I'm going to be covering all things related to Philadelphia here.
All right, gotcha. In some ways, I envy you because it's going to be a zoo down there. But from the standpoint of, I hope to get you next week, but in case and you can change it, obviously, your early thoughts on who's going to win this football game. I think the Eagles are the more talented team, but I'm going to be weighing this all week. Like the moment they beat the Rams, I said the Eagles are winning the Super Bowl. Zander can tell you that. Yeah. I thought Washington had no shot.
John, honestly, it was a little bit before the Rams. You texted me after the Green Bay game when the Rams won, and you're like, "Yeah, I wouldn't worry about the Rams too much either."
And that was closer than it should have been. But this one, I'm going back and forth. The Eagles have the better roster, the better team, 1 through 53, I think. But you got the best coach and the best quarterback. It is hard to pick against that because the Chiefs have a bunch of other good. I think people will act like that's it, but they do have Chris Jones and Karlaftis and 3 good offensive linemen. And even though they don't have the splashy playmakers, they got a bunch of guys that can make plays at receiver now that Hopkins is there and Hollywood Brown is back, and they have Xavier Worthy, et cetera, et cetera. They have 2 good tight ends, with Travis Kelce and Noah Gray. So they have a bunch of good players. What are your early sort of feels on how this game is going to go?
So I've been saying all season, and really it started back when I saw Patrick Mahomes do his post-game interview after beating the 49ers in overtime last year, where he didn't look happy that they won the Super Bowl. And all he was talking about is wanting to go and do it a 3rd time. Obviously something no team has ever done. And I've had this hard time shaking the feeling all year, and from that moment that like this season doesn't matter for any team but the Chiefs. And I've just been of that belief, independent of the Eagles. I'm not saying that applies to the Eagles at all. I've just been so of the mind that the Chiefs are unstoppable, and it certainly felt that way along the way, where anytime they're about to lose a game, for the most part, obviously they lost a couple, but like for the most part, even when things are looking bleak, somehow, some way comes through and they just win. And I have a hard time being like, oh, they're actually not going to do it. To me, I've been using the analogy of, it feels like if you're picking against the Chiefs, you're like Charlie Brown running at the football that Lucy is holding, and you're going to be like, she's really going to hold it this time.
I know.
I have a hard time. I will say that is not just to be clear, I lean towards the Chiefs. I'm not saying the Eagles can't. It's not about like doubting the Eagles. That's not the equation for me. It's just that I have a hard time putting any doubt in the Chiefs because they weren't even that good last year. It doesn't matter. I think they were the lesser team in the last Super Bowl. I think they were the lesser team against the Eagles 2 years ago. Like they were the lesser team. A lot of people I felt like who were picking the Bills in the AFC Championship game. It doesn't matter necessarily that they have the lesser team when you have Mahomes, when you have a great coach in Andy Reid and Spags. So I almost feel like I said earlier, it's almost like the Eagles have to blow them out. It's like they have to just dominate from the jump because if it's close, I just think Mahomes is going to come through.
Hard to push back on that, man.
Yeah.
It really is with how good they've been. So BLJ, good stuff, man. We appreciate it. I hope I'll catch up with you again next week as we get closer to Super Bowl 59. We appreciate you doing it today, as always.
BleedingGreenNation.com. Make sure you check out BLG One-Stop Shop. I always say for your Eagles news every morning at Brandon Gouton on the X platform. Thanks, BLG.
BLG, thanks, man.
See you guys.
See you, man. This is BLG joining us here on Birds 365. You know what the difference between BLG and AJ Brown is? Who can guess?
You can't really go AJB, but you can go BLG.
No, I will say that BLG would not look like
he's much taller. He
not look like a small guy next to LeBron.
Yeah.
So I couldn't believe how small AJ Brown looked next to LeBron James.
LeBron is a big dude.
He's a mammoth of a dude, man. Pretty unbelievable. But good stuff there from BLG. Boy, he's leaning Chiefs, John.
Well, I think he's right. I'm leaning Chiefs early in the process. We'll see as I go. Yeah, I mean, exactly what BLG said. This is Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
I get it.
And I'm basically with him in everything he said. To me, the Eagles have to win this game emphatically. They have to dominate. Because if it's a one-score game late, they've already set the record for one-score wins. Now, a lot of people say, hey, and rightfully so, and eventually that luck is going to wear out.
But at some point, you got to look at it and say it's something that they're doing.
Yeah.
It's not luck.
The margin of error hasn't been there for them. It hasn't been there for the Eagles, and they're at times, and they're both there. They're both in the Super Bowl. So,
all right, let me ask you a question. The Chiefs have made the Super Bowl 3 years in a row. Obviously, they're going for the three-peat. Rank the 3 Chiefs teams, if you can. I know you don't cover them up close, so it might be hard to do that. But
last year was definitely the worst. I would say this one's the best. I mean,
this one's the best.
This team is 17-1. They're not 17-2.
I love how I can say that because it doesn't look pretty, but you're like, bro, they're 17-1. I mean, what more do you want? They got knocked off Allen. They knocked off everybody. So I felt like this one might be the worst. But
I mean, last year's was like they weren't even that good early in the season. You think about them losing, the Eagles beating them in Kansas City. There was a lot of angst with that team.
Yeah.
A lot of angst. This team was 17-1. And I get it. There's a ton of one-score games there. The only team they lost to was Buffalo, at Buffalo. The other loss was the Denver game, which in week 18, which they started Carson Wentz, and it wasn't just Carson Wentz. They benched all their starters. And the offensive line was atrocious, their backup offensive line. I don't even count that game. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is the best of the 3 teams. And I think last year's was the worst, and the team that beat the Eagles was in between.
We'll see how it all plays out. Look at Prince, my guy Prince. You sound like a bunch of P-word. It's Patrick Mahomes and Andy. So what? Debo got knocked out. Suge Knight got knocked out. Mike Tyson got beat. I hear you, Prince.
Well, Prince, can't that be the same thing with the Eagles? Suge Knight got knocked out. Mike Tyson got beat. Debo got knocked out. Can't the Eagles get knocked out?
Yeah, but can't the Chiefs get knocked out?
Sure, but it works both ways.
It does, but who's the king of the hill? not the Eagles.
Well, the king of the hill is the king of the hill for a reason. No, the Eagles aren't the king of the hill until they Ric Flair the Chiefs.
Prince came back up in here and said, enough of the bullshit. We're going to beat this squad. No, I feel pretty good about it, John. I feel better about it than you do because I like Fangio. Not saying he's going to stop him. I think he could slow him. And I like the.
I love Vic, but no offense to Prince. I don't have anything to do with it. Prince don't have anything to do with it.
Obviously.
You don't have anything to do with it. Eagles have they can change the narrative by playing good football. And hopefully they play a good game. They're certainly talented enough to beat the Chiefs, but they were talented enough to beat the Chiefs the last time. But the Chiefs are talented enough to beat the Eagles. I think too many people get that.
They're 17-1. They're talented enough to beat anybody.
Yeah. So, it's a good Super Bowl. It's a good matchup.
I think it's a fitting Super Bowl. I think the two best teams are in the Super Bowl right now.
I don't think we've seen teams that could threaten the Eagles. Really, it's not their fault. That's the way things shook out in the playoffs. It's not, the Eagles handled their business. This is a different animal. This is not, like I said, and Zander can tell you, I said right away, the Eagles are going to beat Washington. I said right away, the Eagles are going to beat the Rams. And that was a little too close than it should have been.
Yeah.
I think in a weird way, their toughest playoff game was their first playoff game. And that wasn't that tough with the Packers. This one's going to be a little bit different.
Like the defense, like the addition of the run game. Love Jalen Carter. I don't know. I feel good about it, but that's probably just the Eagle fan in me, obviously. John, we got a couple more super chats. We'll read them real quick, and then I'll get your final thoughts here as we prep. Chris Scott checks in. Saquon and Coop's birthday are on Super Bowl Sunday. Both guys' jerseys added together is 59. Good omen. People playing numerology, John, with the
yeah, not a numerology guy, not a superstitious guy. I don't buy into stuff like that.
Brian Pumper checks in. As a new profound Jalen Hurts enthusiast, I'm worried that one might not be able to be focused. Too much crawfish to be
much. He likes crawfish. Man.
Oh my god,
he likes crawfish.
Have you ever had crawfish? Like a real crawfish?
Yeah.
There's nothing like it, man. We used to party at Alabama, John, every game day on Saturday. Every party had rows of they would come out with the coolers and dump the crawfish with the corn. I'd be drunk as a skunk sitting there eating corn on the cob and potatoes in the middle of Alabama's camp and crawfish. Great memories.
Jalen's very serious about his crawfish. He would not eat that crawfish.
No, I know. He's I saw the video. Somebody made a video with Jalen making crawfish. I don't know who it was.
Yeah, he's very serious about his crawfish. New Orleans is a good place to get crawfish. So, yeah, it might he might lose focus over the crawfish. But and the good news, Brian, is the numerology says the Eagles are going to win because what happened? Cooper's jersey and Saquon's whatever adds to 59. So it all cancels itself out.
Latef checks in. Do you think Birds will be ready for Corn Dog? Who's Corn Dog?
Corn Dog motion. That's what Andy called the motion that
right.
Super Bowl. That's it's basically everybody uses that motion, and that's why it was so frustrating that the Eagles handled it so poorly. And that was the players, as Slay admitted, to his credit. But people don't want to blame the players, so they blame the guy they don't like. They blew the coverage.
Yep.
Twice.
Devin Parker checks in. J-Mac, how would you compare Mahomes and Reed versus Brady and Belichick? I know different teams and times, but I'm curious since we've had to face both.
1 and 2. I still lean Patriots more than Chiefs so far. But 1 and 2. I always say that Tom Brady broke people's thoughts process on the quarterback position, expecting others to do that. And I said it's going to be a long time before somebody does what Tom Brady did at the quarterback position. And maybe not, because Patrick this would be number 4. So already I would put him right there. And certainly Andy, Bill Belichick. You know, because of what happened post Tom Brady in New England, you could argue that Andy's now in the conversation to be the best coach of the generation, but they both need players to win.
Yep.
And Andy got hooked up with Patrick Mahomes at the right time, and he's a great coach. And as I said, everything about the Philadelphia Eagles, where they've turned into this organization that everybody wants to copy, it all stems back to Andy Reid. He built the foundation of this entire organization on the football side.
No doubt about it. Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Real quick, let me just do this real quick. John, your final thoughts on today's show, man. We're getting closer here to Super Bowl, obviously. And what's on the agenda today for the Birds? And then just your final thoughts as we inch closer to this thing. It's going to go slow these next couple of days.
Yeah, it is. Well, it'll pick up when they get back on the practice fields. So from that standpoint, so they'll be back. I'll get the schedule sometime today, but they'll be back on the practice field tomorrow. So it'll pick up a little bit. Something to talk about more from the standpoint of actual football. And then I'm sure you'll have all the nonsense as well. But it's part of the Super Bowl hype, and that's part of it. It's part of handling the Super Bowl, and that's why it is good the Eagles had that experience and have gone through it, because, you know, it's crazy down there. It's a lot different than a regular game, and Nick was talking about it yesterday. That was I was batting leadoff yesterday, and that's what I asked him, and then he got a follow-up about it. And, you know, he mentioned, look, it's different. Even the breaks are different. The long halftime show, the long pregame show, everything's different about the week. And the more experience you have, obviously it's not going to be an advantage because Kansas City has even a more experience. But the fact that they did it once should help out.
Yeah, I do think it helps because your two leaders, I mean, your coach and your quarterback have been there. So I know Saquon, I know there's a lot of different players, and I get that, but I do think having guys that understand some of those things helps.
Yeah, it helps a lot. And again, Kansas City, it's not going to be an advantage because Kansas City's done it so much, but the fact that they've already done it, they now, at least the core guys, know what to expect and better handle it. AJ was talking about that after the game, you know. He's approaching it differently this time because of what they went through the first time. So I think that's helpful.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. One last super chat. Rodney says, by the way, John, I'm thankful we're in a golden era, because he asked up here, John, are you a Cameo fan? And Zander, how about a Kango giveaway? Pumper, I'm proud of you. EAGLES, Eagles. Yeah, it is a golden era. He's acknowledging
Cameo the band or Cameo the goofy?
I don't know. Are you a Cameo fan? What's that mean?
It's an old school band, but it's also like a social media app where people pay famous people.
Yeah, I know that one. We should make John a Cameo. We gotta get some orders.
I'm not a Cameo guy.
I want John McMullen to say happy birthday to me.
Yeah. I don't know if you're getting many people to buy that Cameo. Maybe LeBron could make significant money on Cameo, but no, I'm not a big hero worship guy, so I'm not buying anybody's Cameo.
Me neither. I'm not buying anybody's Cameo. Prince checked in. Our defense played poor and we lost by 3. We lacked a running game and still lost by 3. Let's line up and go. Go to church if you're scared. All right, Prince. Prince is talking heavy, John.
You know, hey, confidence is better than lack of confidence, but more important for the players than the band.
Rodney did check in and say the band.
The band, word up. So I'll say that.
All right, there you go. All right, John, good stuff, man. We appreciate you doing it. As always, a little overtime here on Birds 365. Great show, man. We'll talk to you in the morning on Birds 365, right, brother?
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
All right, see you, Johnny Mac. John McMullen, the #1 Philadelphia Eagles beat reporter in town. Another great show today. I thought BLG was great today, by the way. I thought BLG was great today.